Lovely to have you here, Greg Fleet.
Nice to be here, mate.
It was touch and go there for a while, mate.
We were just downstairs eating some very beautiful food, and I dug in. I said, I'm not going up there. No. I need more ragu.
I was more referencing the contents of this book.
Oh.
That it was touch and go that you're here tonight.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, that too.
But that too. I should declare that I have known Greg and worked with Greg for many years now, and been a big fan. So it was a great honour, Fleety, to get to do this Q&A with you this evening.
Oh, it's lovely to have you doing. You've got a special black version of the book.
I got,
but it doesn't have the awesome. What's his name?
It doesn't have you. No, it doesn't have your quote from Irvine Welsh, which I know you've been banging on about mercilessly on Facebook.
I suppose I should call him something other than what's his name.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Given that you're resting
that
most of your
junkie.
money. That's right, the guy who wrote Trainspotting.
Yes.
And it has been very well received, and it is an excellent piece of work. Now, I always knew you were a very clever performer, but I did not know that you could write as well as you do. No, I don't mean that as a backhanded.
No. Just I didn't know that you could write.
Well, no. I knew you were literate because we've used an ATM together, but
I imagine it was yours.
No, well, actually, it's a story that's gone down in comedy history where you lent me $50.
Oh,
we were at the public bar.
You're the one.
Yes, but then you did follow me over the road to make sure I paid you back at the end of the gig. But that's all right. I was happy to. Greg, how was the process of putting this? Well, first up, why did you decide now is the time to put these stories together?
Well, I mean, on one level, it was simply the opportunity. I was living in a house with someone who was friends with a guy from Pan Macmillan, and I told her a couple of these stories, and he was there one night, and she said, "Oh, you should tell Angus those stories," and I told him a couple of stories, and he said, "Oh, look, write them down and send them in to us, and maybe we'd be interested in doing." So on one level, it was just simply that, it was that simple. On another level, I was feeling frustrated and a little bit frightened that I was going to die or whatever without addressing some of these issues and without leaving behind something beautiful. I mean, I think the book is in many ways quite beautiful, and for something that a lot of the experiences cost me an enormous amount. I mean, financially, obviously, but also, they cost me career-wise, relationship-wise.
Physically, you do a great description of what drug addiction has done to your body.
But all of that, so it had cost me an enormous amount, and I thought, well, I should address that. Otherwise it's more sad. If I can address that and let people know what it was like, it might be helpful to people, and it will also be an opportunity to just get it out there, and to leave what I consider to be an informative and kind of fun and disturbing and kind of beautiful take on a life.
Well, you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter. And you've certainly...
And you should know.
It's my life, baby. But it is the comedian's job, essentially, to take tragic events and turn them into something that connects with other human beings. It's an enormously difficult thing. For me anyway, one of the most amazing things you've done here is explaining your interest and journey into... I hate the word journey. I'm going to have to punch myself in the face for that later on. But your foray... your foray into the dark side without at any time wallowing in any self-pity. Sometimes I feel though you almost hold yourself too accountable.
Right.
Were you aware, as you wrote this, it is a confessional in many respects. It's full of apologies. It's full of...
Is it too much of that? Is it a bit
sucky? I don't think it's sucky, but sometimes I feel, well, particularly... So the death of your father, that wasn't a death, the fake death of your father, you touch on that very briefly. Now, I want to know more about that.
Okay.
So can you tell people the story of your father's death?
Fuck it, they can buy the book, mate.
Ever the salesman.
Yeah. My father was a bigamist and a philanderer, a riverboat dandy. And he was chronic. He slept with people just obsessively, and all of his friends' wives, all of my mother's friends. He was from America. We came here when I was a kid. He worked for Ford.
And being American doesn't mean that he was a philanderer. Sorry, it just sounded
it kind of does.
He was American.
But he was. This was in the late '60s, and he was a very handsome man. Notice how I went like that? Like he was a very handsome man. No, he was incredibly handsome. But being from America in the late '60s and being very handsome it meant something. It was like Americans were very exotic, and he cashed in on that. So he basically he went into business for himself after a while, for working for Ford as a designer in the executive stream. He went into business for himself. He had just, his relationship was a nightmare. He's sleeping with people all over town. He had men wanting to kill him for sleeping with their partners. And he finally, I guess he just one day went, nothing's working. And he killed himself. He left his car on a pier, left a note with his solicitor, and, that was it. So it wasn't until a couple of years later that someone saw him. And I know that death is pretty bad, but he was working in a real estate agent, and it's not that bad.
One of the circles of hell, sure.
Yeah. But he was seen, and this person told my mother, and she went into his office and confronted him, and where he was working under an assumed name. He'd married another woman under that name and had children. He was quite mad, quite nuts, and
But that's not even the nuttiest bit. The nuttiest bit is that he came back to the family home.
Well, he came back, I think, primarily because he realised my mother could get him into all kinds of trouble, and unfortunately, she loved him, I think, an enormous amount. And look, it's a very sad thing. My mother's still alive, but I think she still does, and that's incredibly bizarre. Like, it wasn't until the mother of my child, my ex, Pauline, said to me one day when we were visiting my mother, she said to me, "What does your mother think of your father?" And I said, "Well, she's furious and this and that." She said, "Yeah, but what does she think of him?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "I think she's in love with him." And I went, "What are you talking about?" She said, "There's a picture of him on the the bedside table." And I went, "Oh my God, it had just always been there, so I'd never thought about it." But so it's like head and shoulders kind of handsome acting shot of my dad next to my mother's bed. And I went, "Oh my God, 30 years later, 40 years later, yeah, I think if he rang her and said, 'Let's get back together,' she'd say yes." But he did that. He when she found him, or when she confronted him, he just savagely dumped the new family, completely cut them off, dumped them, see you later, and reconnected with my mother to avoid getting into trouble, I think, and moved back in with us for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or...
But what was that like? So you've grieved your dad. Did you have like the casseroles and the wreaths and the...
No, not really. Look, in hindsight...
Did your community rally around your family?
I wonder how much they actually believed he was dead.
Okay.
Like, I was a kid, so I didn't really know the stuff.
How old were you?
I was 10.
Okay.
But knowing what they knew about him, I think there would have had to have been some questions. They would have had to have been a bit of, it's convenient, So, but he knew how she felt, and he played her, I think I was saying that he played her like a $10 guitar. Yeah.
Well, he did, but in the book too, though, you don't dwell on how bizarre, I can't even begin to imagine that you must have grieved this man at some level and thought, even if you just thought he'd abandoned...
Not full-on grieving, not like Glenn McGrath grieving where you have to go shoot an elephant. Fuck you, Glenn McGrath. We don't shoot elephants. No, look, I think I did. But he was mental. He did things like when he abandoned the family. Basically, he left a present for me. He left an air rifle, a new air rifle on a table with a note saying, "Greg, always protect the family. Dad. It's a fucking air rifle. Like, you know, if the family, you know, ever gets attacked by small paper targets, they're going down, you know. Like, 3 small swallows got into the house the other day. Dear Dad, 3 small swallows got into the house. I shot 2 of them and let the 3rd one go so he could warn the others what we're like. You know, As I don't know where you live, I won't be sending this message. But, he did nutsoid things like that. And the last time I saw him, we were on a train together, and I was the last person to see him both times, because he left again. You know, obviously the second time he didn't pretend to die. The second time he devolved. He just fucked off.
Old school
Aussie. But he was overloading me with information. I think he realised he was leaving and this would be the last time we saw each other. So he was just trying to totally be a father in 15 minutes. Like, just going, oh shit, I better fucking really go into hyper father mode. So, you know, he's saying, oh, never fight a tattooist. Never take a dolphin to a knife fight. It'll distract you. Never make love to a lady if there's a shovel in the room. I never found out the rest of that, why that was. But, it was just loading me with information and we're walking away. We're at a train station. I was going back up to a place called Timbertop, which is part of Geelong Grammar. I am one of the few people to have gone to Geelong Grammar who wasn't interfered with by a teacher. I actually had lunch with a couple of people yesterday who I went to school with, and I know it's childish, but the 4 of us are all going, well, what was wrong with us? You know? One guy at the lunch was actually going, I was a very attractive young man. Like, he was serious too. He was really put out, you know? But Jonathan Harvey, burn in hell. They were horrible, manipulative, vile people. Don't ever send your children to Geelong Grammar School.
And apologies to Geelong Grammar who are sponsoring this evening.
Yeah. Well, you'll either
anyway, no, they're not.
Even if you get away with, even if you can avoid the child molestation, you will end up a drug addict. So don't go there.
Okay, so reading this book as someone who knows you and loves you, there's a lot of those moments, Gregory Fleet, where they're going, oh, please don't get on that tram. Don't go in that door. Don't, it was like a horrible pantomime. Even though I know what you've done, did you ever have a sense of how concerned other people were? I mean, you make a lot of apologies about the things you've done and the people you've taken things from and all those things to support the other thing that comes across in Technicolor is how exhausting and what a full-time job it is to be a drug user. But did you ever get a sense of other people's concern for you?
No, look, I did, in that people would tell me and things like that, but it's only in hindsight that you realise did someone just get shot with a crossbow?
They did. It was an air rifle, actually. They've just been corked in the thigh. Yeah.
It's only that you realise how terrifying. See, that's the thing for me. I used to see in the mother of my daughter, who's now one of my dearest friends, thank God. We went through a period of just despising each other and we came out the other end of it. And I mean, it was mostly my fault, obviously, but she would look at me and we'd be talking or fighting or whatever, and I would see this anger in her face. She'd be furious at me for the way I was living and the things I was doing and taking drugs and being irresponsible. And it wasn't until years later that I realised it wasn't anger that I was seeing in her face. It was fear, and that's a terrible thing to do to someone, and it's a terrible realisation that you were basically terrorising someone. You were making someone. I mean, I can think of to me the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear, and that I could put people through that. Friends, and the more people cared about you, the more they would suffer. So, friends, lovers, family, to be putting these people through fear is a terrible thing to do, and that's what I found the hardest to deal with. And when I was writing the book, a lot of this stuff came up. I mean, a lot of times they were just fun. Like I'd write a chapter. I was getting up every day at 6 and writing, it's like 2,000 words a day, which is not very much. And I'd be finished before lunchtime, and then I could watch movies and, do whatever I wanted the rest of the day. But, most days I'd write a funny chapter or whatever, and I'd be like, you remember that time we did this, and blah, 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 it was hilarious. But every now and then, in the afternoon I'd be depressed, or I'd feel flat and I'd feel horrible. I'd think, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel so terrible? And then I'd realise I'd just relived some gruesome escapades and, gruesome periods. So it was difficult, but I will say that writing the book was the best therapy that I've ever had. It was easily better than rehab, better than any therapist I've seen.
What impact did it have? What changed after actually laying it all out? This is my story from getting on that tram with the love of my life then to now. What moved?
In what sense? I mean,
well, for you, you're saying it's great therapy.
It was just
insights did you get?
Being made aware of the things that I'd done, and having to write it down, so you're going to, you're spending more time dealing with it than going, I remember when that happened, yeah, God, that was full on, and then moving on. You have to actually write it down. It would take quite a while, so you'd have more time to think about it, and I'd think, God, I actually did that. I actually put that person through that, or whatever, or I was put through that.
Well, that's the thing that's that what you put yourself through, and there is a great lack of sympathy for yourself, which I think on the one hand you're kind of caught when you're writing a book about drug use, because half of our community says, well, bugger you've done this to yourself, why should we have any sympathy for you?
And fair enough.
Well, sort of. And on the other hand, there's always a reason why somebody plays with their life with such indifference, or their health, or their relationships, or whatever the things are that are holding them in place. Do you have greater sympathy for your younger self now, having finished the book?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, certainly. And I
Compassion for yourself.
God,
without letting yourself off the hook. Oh, look, I'm a master. Look. But I felt very compassionate for you, and you were so busy to say...
I'd like to find that person and, not give them a hug, but, maybe just go, no, don't.
Yeah, well,
don't
I wanted to do a lot of that reading it, but also that you were so quick to say, but I fucked up and then I did these, and of course, if you had done the opposite, anyone who's addicted to anything will say, but in the end, you can't keep blaming your parents, or you can't keep blaming, in the end, you've got to take control of your own life.
Yeah.
And so you've walked a very fine line here, and I think you've done it quite masterfully, if perhaps erring on the side of being too tough on yourself at times, rather than more gentle. But I wondered if that changed as the book wore on, or you were so worried about looking like someone who was blaming other people for their own choices.
Well, I was a little bit concerned with that. I wanted to make it very clear that I was accepting responsibility for the things that I'd done. But yeah, I guess I was becoming aware of a lot of this stuff. When people read it, they're probably being made aware of things. I was kind of being made aware of them as I was writing it. So, I didn't want to make excuses for what I'd done. I wanted to be very honest. I basically wanted to address it in such a way that no one would ever be able to come up to me. Like I think I'm unblackmailable, in that I have no secrets.
There aren't many stones left unturned.
Well, I don't think there are. I mean, people probably think, but what is he not telling us? I swear to God, there is nothing. There is nothing that I haven't put in there. If there is, it's because it wasn't interesting enough or exciting enough. But there is. I don't really have any secrets, and I don't know if that's necessarily healthy. Maybe we should have secrets. Maybe we all deserve to have a couple of secrets.
Comedians don't get secrets, mate. You don't get to keep secrets, because it's about exposing of the truth. Now, it's a very funny book. I know we've gone on a heavy bit and you're a bit sweaty, so I'm going to change it because I love you. Best in show. Okay, so I was saying to you earlier, this is my favourite.
She was saying, I've got a favourite bit, and I was going, is it the bit where me and Reese Muldoon pretend to have sex and
No.
to upset another actor.
Oh, that was great. That was golden. No, but this bit I read out to my children. So.
That bit. The only bit you're allowed to read out to children. No.
Have you got your glasses? Can you?
Yeah.
Would you mind reading this chapter out? Because I think.
Would you put them on? Would you mind? Touch it. Touch it. Do it, library boy.
Come on, egghead. Read that. Thanks.
Best in show. I just saw the term Jesus fucking Christos. I made that up. Okay, now, before I do this, I should point out that I have a dog, and she's the most beautiful little puppy dog in the world. She's a little snuffer. Oh, snuff, snuff. Okay, just letting you know, because I don't want her to be jealous. Okay.
I don't think she's here.
Best in show. I was never a massive nerd as a kid, but I did do one of the nerdiest things you can do, regularly and for a couple of years. These days, when friends of mine try and win the award for person who did the nerdiest thing as a child, I let them run with it. I let them think that they're going to win. They've usually done some semi-pro nerd thing like Pony Club or Scouts, and good on them for having a go. But that plane don't fly around here no more. Just as they reach for the imaginary trophy that they think they've won by admitting to 2 years of dedicated macrame, I say, excuse me, but I think you'll find that trophy is coming home with me. Because as nerdy as you were, I used to show my dog at dog shows. Bang. He was a brindle Great Dane named Boris, show name Meritone Mylock. And not only did I show him, but while doing it, I wore purple flared cords and a purple and white banded turtleneck jumper. I pranced around the ring with that dog, who really was one of my best friends, so nerdly that eventually we earned 100 points and he became Australian champion. Nerd, set and match. Yahtzee! But I was also Boris's pimp. I got paid $400 every time he was used at stud, and he got used at stud a lot. The Lady Great Danes couldn't get enough of him, so essentially he was a high-class male prostitute. Whenever somebody wanted his services or I needed money, I hooked him up. I may have only been 14, but I started wearing ankle-length fur coats and big fedora hats in luxurious cashmere. I had an engraved ivory walking stick and diamond rings on every finger. Boris had a ruby-studded collar. We both carried guns. I was cold pimping in full effect. When the hammers came down and it was time for my boy to do his thing, we were a team. I'd be in the house of the family we were visiting while our 2 Great Danes made sweet backyard love. As Boris's muscle-stroke pimp, I was always ready for something to go wrong. Maybe the other dog's family members might reach for something in their jackets a little too quickly. Or maybe the lady dog would start getting rough with my boy. That was a deal breaker. No rough stuff. I wouldn't tolerate any hanky-panky. And I think that the people in the dog fucking world knew that and feared and respected me. When Boris was done, I would take the cash and we would be Splitsville, population 2. Gone like the wind to my mother's Escort. As Mum drove Boris and I home in her Ford Escort, I would sit in the back seat next to him counting out our money. And I'd always ask him, was she a nice dog? Yeah, I guess she was nice, he would reply, gazing out the window at the semi-rural beachside landscape. There would follow a long silence or pause. Oh, yes, I did. Before Boris would turn to me and say, you know what, Fleety? Bitches ain't shit. And then he would high-five me and grin his big, goofy Great Dane grin because he was being ironic. At heart, he was a feminist. A dog for all seasons. God, I loved him so much. Long before Boris the Great Dane, back when I was 3 years old and still living in Michigan, Santa Claus gave my sister Kristen and I a beautiful St. Bernard puppy. She was little with huge floppy feet that she would rapidly outgrow. Her name was Freda, and we loved her. It would seem that Santa either hated us or he had bought Freda from cheap from Crazy Gary's Discount Canines. Because when she was about 9 months old and the size of a car, Freda turned into a vicious death-dealing monster. If she filled in a job application, she would have listed under hobbies 1, attacking people, 2, attacking anything else, 3, see above. My parents called in a guy. Even as a 3-year-old, I can tell he was dangerously overconfident and suicidally underprepared to deal with Freda. He put on one of those weird arm protector things, one of those I hope the dog only bites me on the arm kind of protectors, and casually strolled out into the backyard, or the killing fields. Freda looked bewildered that someone was dumb enough to even approach her without at least carrying a shotgun. The dog handler called out her name in a soft, sing-songy voice, as if to calm her. But by this stage, Freda had been so long in the trenches of madness that the guy could just as well have been shouting, "Come on, cunt, have a fucking go!" They made eye contact. They took each other in. And then she fucked him up El Masivo style. She fucking owned him. She bit him everywhere except for the arm protector. When he staggered back into the house, his clothes all ripped and covered in blood, he had the look of someone who was thinking about changing careers. The next day, my mother and father sat Kristen, my older sister, and I down and told us that through an old military friend of my dad's, Freda had been adopted by the army. Apparently, the US Army loved Freda. They loved her strength, and they knew how to focus her aggression into what they needed. Freda had joined the army. I always felt good that she'd found her place, a place where she could be herself. Good old crazy Freda. Everyone's a winner. When I was 50 years old, I was visiting my mother, and I asked her something that I'd been wondering about for 46 years. Scene: a man and his mother talk and drink coffee. Man: Mum, remember when Freda joined the army? Mum: pause. Yes. What exactly did she do for them? I mean, she was pretty full on. I mean, she must have been some kind of, I don't know, like an enforcer or like a guard dog, right? Mum: okay. Man: well, what do you mean, okay? Mum can't hide her smile, loving this. Oh, Greg, you don't really think that Freda joined the army, do you? Man, realisation dawning. No. Oh, fuck, you did. No, you didn't. So she was actually, Mum, yeah, we had her whacked. For some reason, my mum often speaks like a gangster. She says things like whacked and often uses the phrase, some guy from Jersey. Mum, don't talk like you're in the mafia. You know I don't like it. Mum: okay, we had her put down. Man: oh, what? We had her put down? Why didn't you tell me? Mum: well, you were 3 years old. Well, why didn't you tell me later? Mum: because we seriously overestimated your intelligence. We thought you would work it out. Your sister knew straight away. She was 5. You're 50. Harden the fuck up, fuckstick. Everything and everyone joins the army eventually. It's just part of life. I will be joining the army fairly soon. Man, stop it, Mum. Mum, I've already gone down and filled out my enlistment papers. I told my daughter Sunday that story, and she loved it. And now, whenever any one of us sees an old person or an old animal, we turn to each other and say, not long till they join the army. Viva Freda!
Thank you. I love that story, and I am really interested to know how your family and friends have been included in the book. Two things. One, were you anxious about your inclusion, and how did you decide who was going in and who was going to be left out? And did you seek consent?
Yeah, I always seek consent. I'm not a teacher at Geelong Grammar. No, I think one of the good things was at no point did it really even occur to me to put someone in or leave them out or whatever. I just wrote what happened. I just wrote the truth of what happened in all of those situations. Now, wherever I'd compromised someone's integrity or, if I talked about someone taking drugs or committing a crime or doing something, possibly seen as immoral or whatever, I would change their name. There's quite a few people in there who I name, I use their real names. That's either because I'm not talking about them doing anything inappropriate or because I've spoken to them and they've said, I don't care. Fuck it. I've already got a TV show. Just go for it.
The dark side of Tracy Grimshaw. We never knew it. Yeah.
But, so it never occurred to me to do one or the other. I wasn't approaching it thinking, I better be careful about so-and-so, or I can't tell that story about so-and-so, I just thought, well, if needs be, I'll change names. But, I just thought the story comes first, tell the story, and worry about all that stuff later, worry about, the legal ramifications of things. The publishers have got lawyers, they told me to change a couple of things, they said...
They did?
Okay. Just because, it just, Sam Worthington doesn't want people to know that he's had oral sex with an Alsatian.
No, fair enough.
It's so not true. That never happened. Well, as far as I know.
It wasn't a Chihuahua. Yeah.
It may have happened. Even if it did, that's an amazing coincidence that I pulled that out of the air. I've never met Sam Worthington, so he's a very good actor, though.
He's a big fan of yours, mate.
I'm a big fan of his acting. One thing I love about Sam Worthington, he's one of the few actors. I did a film with someone who had worked with him, and they were saying that his whole thing is less dialogue. He always cuts his dialogue, whereas most people want to talk more and be seen more and stand closer to the camera. He's like less is more, and I admire that.
It's a great thing. Yeah. Speaking of acting and actoring styles,
yes.
Tell us. That you do in this book often move to sort of little play scripts.
Yes.
You wrote a beautiful play last year for Fringe Festival. This is not a love song. Which
we're doing it again early next year for 4 nights at the Gasworks.
It is a brilliant. It undid me. It took all my stitches apart and all my stuffing fell out. I told you I nearly had to go into a home.
Teddy bear.
I know, it was awful. It was immediately post-divorce. It was a terrible time to go on, but it was a beautiful...
Oh, you were crying.
Oh, it was a mess, remember?
Yeah.
People wanted to call services. Anyway, no one did. Fuckers. But but I wonder, are you torn now, having written a novel? Do you think you would sort of devote yourself more to playwriting? There are so many plays, little seeds of plays that come through this.
I want to.
I mean, the novel's
it's
not a novel; it's a memoir. But
I want to do both. I want to write. I've got a couple of ideas for. I've got an idea for a play. I've got a couple of ideas for TV series, like a kind of 8-part. Sort of series. I've got 2 of those, both very different, and both I think awesome. I think they'd be beautiful to see, and they'd be great. Ideally, to me, the future is about writing. For me, it's about writing, and maybe a bit of acting. But acting is, acting, you sort of take it or leave it. It's fun, and it's it's.
But it is where you started. I mean, a lot of people here might not know that you started at NIDA, and that's. Thankfully you were expelled and became a comedian.
Yeah, I was in the same year as Baz Luhrmann at NIDA.
Loser, never heard of him.
Yeah.
No career heard of him.
Yeah. But NIDA, which I got in trouble for saying stood for No, I Don't Act. And there was also one day where we had to go around in a circle in first year and everyone had to say what they thought acting was. And oh my God, people without serious education should not be allowed to speak in public. God, some of the tedious things. Oh,
What like? What did they
acting's,
say?
you know, like it's a spiritual journey to confront, you know, the innermost demons and fucking confront neighbours, mofo. You know, like, it's, you know, and finally got around to me, and I said, I reckon acting is dressing up in other people's clothes and telling lies.
Right.
And they were not happy with that. Oh no, sir, you do not, sir.
But you did stay there for some time, didn't you? Like you gave it a red hot go.
Yes, I was thrown out, something, blah, blah, heroin, blah, something. I don't know, I didn't pay attention. But, basically that was one of my first, I think possibly the first ever major regret of my life was when I remember it so clearly, speaking to this lovely man called Nick Enright, who was a theatre genius and beautiful man and very, very clever and creative man, walking out of his office as he was forced into a position where he had to tell me that I wasn't coming back, which was very unpleasant for him because he was a big supporter of mine and wanted to see me do well. And he could see me just pissing it all away on drugs and stuff. But, you know, walking out of his office, getting on my little motorbike and riding away from NIDA for that last time, the feeling of, oh my God, what have I done? It was the first time I'd had that feeling, you know, like that I've really done a bad thing. I've let a golden opportunity, you know, disappear. And it was heart-wrenching. But this shows how fucked up drug addiction is. While it was destroying me, I kept thinking, 10 minutes away is, you know, my girlfriend and a big shot of heroin and everything will be okay.
And is that the appeal then, do you think? Like that it is this
It's a painkiller.
Anaesthetist.
It's a painkiller.
Yeah. Anaesthetist, anaesthetic.
Yeah.
Do you think your father's sex addiction was similarly a self-soothing, self-comforting tool?
He was a self-comforting tool.
But you know, given now that we know more about the sort of infantilised state of, you know, wanting to remove adult escapism, be it through sex or drugs or alcohol or some other eating, some other immersion, do you think he suffered from a similar sort of addiction that was perhaps less expensive?
I stopped listening after the word infantilism. I was like, what the fuck does that word mean?
No, but you know, that sort of...
No, I do.
Yeah.
Look, I've thought about that.
I thought you were smarter, sorry.
Yeah, no, I thought, it's not about smartness, it's about education, and I spent most of my education running from men and hiding.
Oh, you did not.
It was difficult to take in English literature at the same time. It was actually lovely. It was a beautiful school. But I would never send my child there because I want her to...
Not be molested. Okay,
yeah,
so...
I wanted her to fall in...
What about...
I want her first sexual experience to be with someone she's in love with.
That'd be a nice thing.
Yeah, highly unlikely.
No, but have you thought that about your dad? That was...
Yeah, I have. I've thought about that, and I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I don't know whether, you know, if there is a gene in our family of addiction, that would be the only time it shows up. You know, no one in my family was a big drinker or drug taker or anything like that. So, you know, if obsessive or addictive behaviour, that's where it would show up, is in that, you know, stuff that he did. So possibly, but I really don't know. I'm loath to go. You know, I don't. In one level, I'm loath to blame my addictive behaviour on someone in my family or my father and go, you know, look, it's because of him. You know, that's because.
But it's still pretty big. Not many people have their dad fake their death.
Yeah, but on one hand, I'm loath to do that because. On one hand, I don't want people to think that I'm just passing the buck and blaming him. But on the other hand, I don't want to give him the credit. You know, I don't want him to have any credit for anything that happened in my life, good or bad.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough. I get that.
Yeah.
Is there a difficult line when you're talking about drugs, and some of these stories are very, very funny, that you can be seen to be celebrating or reminiscing with such fondness, you know, that line that drugs are fun. The reason people take them is not because they feel terrible, but because they feel really good.
Yeah.
Do you worry about that when you're talking really frankly about an experience you've had, that somehow you're going to be put up as the poster boy for drug use? Because you are here, you are successful, you are still loved by so many people.
God.
What?
I said, thank God.
Thank you, because
amazing.
it's because somehow you've kept those relationships functional, and I think it's because of that refusal to be blame shifting. You know, you have owned it the whole way through.
Blame shifter.
Yeah, shape shifter, blame shifter.
Blame shifter. Welcome
Shut
to
up,
Planet
idiot!
Gorzon.
I'm trying to be the serious interviewer, all right?
Blame shifter.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
C-3PO.
No, but seriously, was that when you...
Shifter. All right,
I can wait all day.
I'll stop
I've
now.
been a high school teacher. We can all wait for Greg to finish his shenanigans. Are you done?
One more.
One more.
Blame shifter.
Hold on. So, do you... I can't even remember what I was going to say. Oh, no, I do. I do. Is there a fear of celebrating... Okay.
All right.
Oh, that was worth the effort.
So yeah, is there a fear? Look, there is a fear of being seen to be celebrating or encouraging or romanticising drug use, and I certainly romanticised drugs, and I think that was part of how I got
Well, you were
into that
almost in
scene.
love every time you started on a new drug campaign.
Yeah, well, it was usually because someone I was in love with was doing that
Yeah.
drug, and I'd want to be like them or be with them. That's a whole different world unto itself. But I don't think, and I'm glad about this. I don't think I was really conscious of going, oh no, I better be careful as I'm writing this. I better be careful not to. I didn't write it longhand with a quill on a riverboat, but I don't think I was. Going, oh, I better be careful with this. I think I just wrote it, like with the names. I just write it. And I knew that most of the stories, most of my drug addictive, things ended in such torment that I knew that, there's already a cap for it. No matter how fun it might seem in the beginning, there was always, a horrible ending. And look, anyone who tries to be come across as an authority on drugs that doesn't acknowledge how fun they are is a fucking idiot and shouldn't be listened to, because if you don't acknowledge that, young people for a start are going to just wipe you. If you can't have an honest conversation with young people about drugs, you're never going to get anywhere, because obviously they feel good. That's why people do them.
Yeah.
They do feel good. And look, just about every drug I've ever had, in fact every drug I've ever had, was fantastic in the beginning. It was absolutely mind-blowingly wild. Physically, spiritually, mentally. It was great. But unfortunately, I then abused that and abused it and abused it, and it became absolutely horrific. In fact, the thing is, for me, it became so horrific that the horror far outweighed the joy.
And that's clear at the end.
I think it is clear. I don't think anyone could read the book and even vaguely go, oh, he's a little bit pro-drug,
No, it's just because you're really funny recounting the horror. That's the trap. I think, now look, we are up to question time. Are there people who would like to put a question to Greg?
Because you can't.
Because you may. It is over to you. Yes. Question from the floor.
Where?
Hi, Greg. Oh, sorry. Over.
You don't have to see, really.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to see.
Just use your ears. Use your ears.
Okay. Hi.
If you had been addicted to something that was legal or less expensive, do you think that the impact and the devastation in life would have been what it has?
Probably not. I think I probably would have got a lot more done. I think, one of my regrets is that, I have so many friends, and it's without name dropping, through the book, there are people I've lived with and shared, been very intimate with, and, really, created things and loved each other and loved each other's work. I mean, I lived with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in London, the guys from Shaun of the Dead. I've lived with Ben Mendelsohn. I've lived with Stuart Lee, I've worked with some incredible the guys from the Mighty Boosh. I have this incredible fan base of incredibly successful, beautiful, creative people who essentially are a little bit heartbroken that I didn't join them on this journey, because I was so busy, writing myself off. And I could just as easily have, gone with them and been part of these incredible shows and I think it hurts them. I know Tony Martin, for one, who I just adore, and I think he's one of the most creative people in Australia, if not the world. He finds it hard. I mean, he and I get along brilliantly now, and things are a lot better. But for a long period, he found it hard to be around me because he couldn't deal with watching me waste what he saw as as this incredible ability. He doesn't understand people not making the most of what they've got. I mean, he's incredibly hardworking and incredibly inspired, but he can't be around people that piss their talent away. He finds it, just excruciating.
But do you think, though, you weren't ready then? That maybe now is the next phase is the time. It's not like your talent dries up. And in fact,
no. And I've never suffered from writer's block or anything.
No.
I mean, I've done uninspired shows, and I've left things to the last minute and thrown together a bit of a show.
But that's because of the drugs. But if the drugs aren't there,
then with the drugs not there, I actually get bored very quickly.
You write books, mate.
Well, that's why, because it's like without the drugs, I get bored and I want to create. I want to make things. So, I think. I think without the drugs, I'm almost forced to make something lovely, which is great.
Beautiful, man. Other questions? Yes.
That's it. I'm going.
No, there's one coming. God, you're such an egomaniac. Go on. Okay.
Oh,
hi. The addiction memoir is a pretty well-tread path. When you decided that you were going to write this book, did you sort of touch base with other books in the past? Did you have influences that you were avoiding or that you were sort of bringing on as inspiration in terms of the history of that sort of literature?
To be honest, I don't really know. I mean, I have read a lot of, in the past, growing up, I'd read a lot of addicts or, not even necessarily addicts, but drug users and all that kind of. I'd read a lot of their books, from William Burroughs to Hunter S. Thompson to, all the usual ones, De Quincey, and just because I was interested in what they were, in what they were talking about and interested in their take on this thing. And I think also certainly with opiates and things like that, you think not a lot of, the percentage of society that have done them is quite small. So I was really interested to read other people's experiences of those things. And but no, I didn't go back to any of those things when I was writing this. I didn't go back and check anything with them. I just let whatever influence I'd got from that when I'd first read them 20 years before, I let that colour, what I did to some degree. But I didn't really think about it. To be honest, I didn't really think about it as an addiction memoir, like to be put up with those other ones. I just thought of it as my life. It's just what I'd done. I had nothing else to write about. Then.
It's a full-time job too, really, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's exhausting, and it's there's no real justification for it, but it's exhausting. And to me, it was more it's like a memoir. It's my upbringing, my family, my education, my job, and the love of my life, which unfortunately was drugs. And that's heartbreaking to realise that. And, it's not really. I mean, the love of my life is probably my daughter, but, to think that I've spent more time and energy and focus and money on my relationship with heroin than anything else,
Well,
it's lasted longer than any relationship I've had, lasted longer than my child's been alive, lasted longer than, any job I've had or career I've had. It's shit.
But you're not. Tell me about Sunday. Have you read... Well, she will read this. I know she's only, 14? Sunday?
She's the day of the week. What are you talking about? Oh, that Fleety. He's incredible. She's 13.
She's 13. So when she talks to you about drugs, what do you say?
Well, she is, and I think this is quite normal. I think people tend to go against their well, sometimes people grow up and go against what their parents did. She's staunchly anti-drugs. She hates drugs. She's terrified by them. She's terrified that, this is a terrible thing that I've done, is putting a child through this fear that I might die or whatever. She suffers from that more now than she ever did. When she was younger, she didn't know that I was taking drugs. And now that she's older, she knows that I did, and she's worried that I'll go back and take them again and die or whatever. So, she worries about that. But she's very anti-drugs. Her mother is incredibly straight. Her mother has never been a drug taker. I think, her mum might have had 2 or 3 tokes on a joint in her life. That's it. But her mum will have a couple of glasses of wine, and Sunday will be like, "Mum, are you an alcoholic?" Like, she'll have 2 glasses of wine. So she's hyper aware of addiction, and she hates alcohol, hates cigarettes, hates drugs, and I'm very happy for all of that.
If she goes through an experimental phase,
I will beat her and beat
good.
her.
Because it's not, unthinkable that there'll be a point.
It's fucking unthinkable to me. Oh God, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know how I would deal with it.
Is there anything that anyone could have said to you or should have said to you that would have?
I don't think so.
Deflected you.
I really don't think so. I don't see how that would be possible. I mean, that's why I say I don't know what I would say to Sunday, other than I would be as supportive as I could. I would just be there for her as much as I could, and I would know that with that support comes, if it was a serious addiction, and I hate the idea of even thinking about her doing this, but I'd know that I was setting myself for her to take advantage of me and exploit that. So oh God, I can't imagine it happening with her, and I thank God I can't, because I don't want to think about it. But
okay. You don't have to think about it
no,
anymore,
no,
baby. It's all right.
A friend of mine said to me the other day, a guy I know from Perth, he's a comic, I was in Perth, and he said, "Oh, Fleety, it's great to see you." He said, "Because this friend of mine has developed a heroin addiction, and he's losing it on heroin, and I'm so glad I've seen you, because I want to ask you, what should I do?" And I stood there for about a minute, and I went, "I have no idea."
No.
It's so annoying to think I've been through all of that, and yet I still don't have the answers. There are no answers, unfortunately.
Which is, true, isn't it? Any other questions? Oh, there's a couple up the front. Yep.
Yeah, Greg, do you feel in your heart of hearts that you're successful now?
No, I don't. I feel very stressed and sad about the fact that I haven't achieved anywhere near what I should have and what I'm capable of. I almost said what I was capable of then. That's horrible. But no, I really, I want to work in the next couple of years. I want to create some really incredible things so that people, and it's selfish of me, but I guess I want people to look at those things and go, "Oh my God, imagine what things would have been like had he, got it together earlier." But, maybe that would never be the case. Maybe I had to, like you said, maybe I had to go through the things I had to get to where I am. But,
nothing is wasted in a way, isn't it? I mean, it will build to something.
Well, hopefully.
It's built to this, which is a fabulous book. And we should say, it is a beautifully written memoir.
I don't feel happy about the way things have worked out. I mean, I'm happy that I'm alive and I've got the opportunity to, that I can have a relationship with my daughter and, my puppy dog and, my daughter's mum and friends and, audiences, which is a highly significant relationship to me in my life. So I'm very lucky that I've still got all that. But, I really need to pay. I feel like people have put a lot of faith and trust in me over the years, and I feel like I haven't really delivered. I have, on some levels I have, but, I would really like to, and I think this book is a step in the right direction. I think it really is quite a remarkable book, I hope so anyway, and, I'd really love to just, to make more stuff so that people can go, that's why we went to that bloody book launch that night, because he was worth it, He's decent.
You was.
I was,
and you are. Would you please give a big round of applause and a thank you to Greg Fleet, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And also to the wonderful George McEncroe.